Hi, friend. Welcome to Mountain Meadow Homestead. My name is Melissa, if you're new here, and this is part three of a three-part series about our gardening journal that we created. And so, if you haven't seen part one or two yet, I highly recommend that you go back and do that. But today, we're going to take a look at how we are planning our gardening spaces this year. All right, so far I've explained to you what was in our garden journal, what we are planning on preserving this year, and how that translated to what seeds we needed to start. So today we're going to go over where we're going to put things in the garden. And there are a lot of things that are up in the air right now as far as our gardening space goes, just because we don't know when our high tunnel is going to be ready for planting. So, as of right now, we have been approved for our high tunnel and we've signed the final paperwork. And we are waiting for the state to come back and give us our go ahead to order that high tunnel and to give us the funding to do so. What that means for us is we are unsure at this time if we're going to have that high tunnel up in time to plant in by June. Um, we're hoping so, but we're going to err on the side of caution. So, a lot of the plants that I definitely want to harvest from, we're going to hyper focus those in our garden here at our house. And then anything that can be planted maybe a little bit later in the season or direct sown into the garden. We're going to plan on that being in the high tunnel. And if we're able to plant it, great. If not, we can go to the farmer's market and get that produce to help us preserve for this year. And so I just don't want to push myself too much by creating goals that are not realistic when it comes to this high tunnel. And so I'm giving myself grace when it comes to this area. But I'm going to bring you in and show you our garden layouts that I have here in this gardening journal, kind of my thought process about where I'm putting what. And if you see something that you're like, hey, that's too close together, or it may be better in this area rather than that area, please let me know. There are things that I haven't grown before. Like, we're going to try peanuts this year, and I don't know how they're going to do here, but I really, really, really hope that they grow well here. So just give me your feedback down in the comments. I would love that. Okay, I hope you can see this all right, but the first part of our property that we're going to go over is this back corner garden. So back in the corner of our property, we have a makeshift greenhouse of sorts. I would say it mimics more of a high tunnel, but it's almost 30 feet long. So this is roughly 30 feet by 30 feet-ish space. But because we're unsure if our high tunnel is not going to be ready in time, we're going to stick our tomatoes in this greenhouse. So I'm going to scooch this down. This whole section here, we're going to do our tomatoes. And I've grown tomatoes in my greenhouse and they do really, really well before. And so we're going to grow them about every 18 inches. That's really worked well in the past as long as I keep them pruned and healthy. We do just fine with the 18 inches. So we're going to do our 10 Roma plants and then our 5 Napoli tomato plants. And then we're going to do our other tomato varieties over here. So like our slicing tomatoes, our cherry tomatoes, those type of things. And then my kids do love the ground cherries. So we're going to do the ground cherries here in the corner. And I will mention this is a raised bed with cattle panels over top. And then we put greenhouse plastic on top of that and do the wiggle wire here. And as soon as the snow's gone, I can do a video explaining how we built this and what it looks like. But and then we're going to do all of our peppers along this side. I will mention the sun does come this way. And so I've found that my peppers do better on this side because they're not shaded out by anything and they get the most sun during the day. So we're going to do our peppers here. And then we're going to plant as many tomatillos as we can in here. I have them planted every foot or so. We'll just see how much space we really have at this time. And so that is essentially the greenhouse. It does have ends that I can open and close based on if we need it open during the day and then closed at night. And I can show you all that this summer. So then we have just a planting area. There's no raised beds here. It's all in ground. We're going to go ahead and do our broccoli and cauliflower here because that is important to me to get a good harvest on those. And I did do, when I was explaining what seed varieties we were going to plant this year, I did explain that I've had the most success with broccoli and cauliflower if as soon as I plant them, if I keep them covered with a row cover during the whole season until harvest, I have beautiful cauliflower and broccoli that are bug free and they just thrive. So we're going to do that. And then on this end here, we're going to do our artichokes in here. I really wanted to get some acorn squash and some like butternut squash this year. And so I did dedicate this portion of this in-ground garden to some acorn squash and then the butter bush squash variety, which is essentially a smaller butternut and has a smaller growing window. So we're going to do that. Then I do have a trellis on this side that we're going to do our shelling peas up to this point, and then I'm going to leave a gap so that I can tell the difference between the two types of peas. I'm going to put some flowers in there, and then we're going to have our sugar snap peas. I'm hoping that I'll have enough space that I can plant my celery along the outside of this, just based on what I've done in the past, and I think that'll work. So we're going to try and squeeze as much into these garden spaces as we can, obviously keeping in mind the soil real estate. We want to make sure things thrive in doing so. And then I've got my zucchini in this little spot here that we'll plant. I only need two because once you have a thriving zucchini plant here, you're just inundated with a ton of zucchini. So two will be plenty, and we'll do that. Along the greenhouse, because this area is shaded, I have my walking path here, and then I also have where I'm going to plant my lettuces and greens and herbs all along here. They do really well and they don't bolt as fast. Over here we have the raised bed garden area that's over on the other side of our backyard, and we're going to designate one whole box to onions plus another half-ish to onions, just because we have two varieties of bulbing onions that we're growing, and then we have two varieties of bunching onions that we're growing, and so we just need to make sure we have enough space for all of those. And then I am going to try and grow a few beets here. My husband likes beets, and so I want to make sure I grow some for him. And then in this other half of the bed, we're going to grow some green beans. I'm going to do my jade green beans here. I've grown green beans in a half a bed before, and it does produce quite a bit. So I do think this would be sufficient for our needs in case we're not able to utilize the high tunnel. So, and then we're going to do a whole bed of potatoes and then a whole bed of carrots. I am going to plant along this side. I may switch it to this side. I'm not sure, depending on the sun. That's where we're going to try growing our peanuts. So we'll see when it comes time for planting on which way I go. And then we do have a fifth box that is our raspberry patch, and we won't need to do anything in this bed necessarily besides amending the soil a little bit and going through and trimming out any old wood. And so that's that. So then this is what we're going to have for our high tunnel. So again, we're not sure if this high tunnel will be up in time or not. However, we do have these two 4 foot by 8 foot raised beds that we planted garlic in last year, and I also have some perennial plants in here as well. And so this is something that is already up there existing. We also last year planted 3 honeyberry bushes in front of those raised beds, and hopefully they made it through the winter. And um, in a couple years, we'll start getting honeyberries off of it. But our high tunnel is a 30 foot by 48 foot high tunnel, and we do plan on doing 6 rows in this high tunnel with 5 walking paths. And so each row is going to be roughly 3 feet wide, and I think I calculated these walking paths will be 2.5 feet wide. So um, in here, I will show you, I planned on items that don't necessarily need to be started way in advance or can be direct sown. So I think this row here, we've got all of our corn, and I've got some flowers in there to kind of separate them. And then all of these ones are like drying beans, and so they can be direct sown. These are some more green beans. They can be direct sown. And then here I have squashes and melons and the like. So those typically don't need to be started until like 3 or 4 weeks in advance. So if we're getting about 3 or 4 weeks from the beginning of June and it looks like we're going to have this high tunnel up, then I'll get a lot of these started. So, and then everything else in here, I think I'm going to do just a cover crop to really feed our soil, loosen it up a bit. We'll probably broad fork it as well. I will take you through the whole process that we're going to do with working this soil. We have very, very heavy clay soil. When we were digging for our water line this last summer, you could basically take the soil and make a clay pot out of it. So I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of reading on how to handle this situation, and I have kind of a goal in mind on as to what we're going to do to tackle this, and cover cropping is part of that plan. So we'll cover crop at least 3 of these rows. As of right now, that's the plan. I always get a wild hair and go crazy, so we might end up planting these rows if we get this high tunnel up. So we'll see. As of right now, this is the plan. And then we do have an exterior row that I wanted to include on the outside of the garden. I'll probably put this about 10 feet away. We'll just kind of eyeball it at the time when we go to prepare this portion. But I want some permanent things at this property, and that's going to be a raspberry patch. I want to get an asparagus patch going, some rhubarb bushes, and a strawberry patch. So this, again, I think we'll do about 10-ish feet away, just because if I ever plant something tall like corn or tomato plants along this wall, I don't want it to shade out this when the sun is coming over to this portion of the high tunnel. The sun does travel kind of like this. So we'll just kind of see as we get this high tunnel up, and how the sun is hitting it and how much shade we need to account for. But anyway, that is kind of the tentative plan to ensure we get as much produce as possible into our garden spaces, and therefore to make sure we get as much produce on our pantry shelves as we're hoping for. So I hope this was helpful to kind of see how we're planning out these garden spaces. And if there's anything that you would like to give feedback on down below in the comments, I would sure appreciate it. I've been gardening for about 6 years now, but I am by no means a master gardener. So I'm always looking for advice, and I'll take whatever you'll give me. So We are a zone 3B, 4A, depending on the year. Our typical gardening season runs from about June 10th for our last frost date to about September 10th, depending on the year. We might get some lighter frost at the end of August, but usually it's something that we can do row covers and protect our crops from. So, if you grow in a similar season, I'd love any feedback that you give us. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with others so that we can all learn together. And if you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe and stick around and join us as we go through putting up this high tunnel and into the gardening season. I'm hoping to do like weekly garden tours and to show you all how everything's growing and what I'm doing. And so I'd love for you to stick around for that again so we can all learn together and give each other feedback. So we hope to see you next time, friend, and we hope you have a great day. Bye.